Great. Thank you all for coming. A lot of new faces here. How many of you are new? This is your first time here. Awesome. 6 months? Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for coming. This is the Office 3. Yeah, the recording's on. This is the Office 365 user group. If you're here for the SQL user group, they're next door. Much bigger crowd, and I think they're going to have better food, which we can maybe borrow. We are recording this session, so if you don't want to get caught legally or anything in a recording, don't say anything. Feel free to ask questions. It's going to be okay, but just be aware that we are recording. Real quick, that animation's so long. Real quick, my name is Dave Feldman. I'm a solution architect with Slalom, Dimitri, one of my counterparts, and Mike. They're both, well, Dimitri's a digital partner with Turn Digital. Mike is senior consultant with Wellington Street Consulting. We are the organizers and founders of this group. We've been doing this be celebrating 4 years in May, I think. So if you have any questions, feedback, issues, comments, negative or positive, we would love to hear from it. If it's negative, go to Mike, please. I'll take all the positive stuff. Last month, we had a session with Nicole on using modern SharePoint sites in Office 365 and telling your story. She went through some great use cases that she uses in Takeda on SharePoint sites and how she's sharing information and how she's telling, enabling groups and departments to kind of tell their story using the Office 365 stack. That session is on YouTube, so if you go to that URL right there, you can watch that session and some of our other sessions online. So this part of the session, we'd like to walk through what's new since the last time we met. Microsoft is pushing out a ton of updates all the time, and we'd like to kind of just highlight the cool ones, the good ones, the ones that we think you guys might be interested in since we've last met. So the OneDrive sync on Windows now supports IRM. How many of you running with IRM? Anybody? One? That's it? All right. So it's a good thing it supports it, but we're not going to continue talking about it. You can now move files anywhere in Office 365, and when you move a file, it's full fidelity of that file. So the metadata moves with it, and the version history moves with that file. So moving a file from, say, a group site to a public communication site, all that information will carry over. It does match on column names, just be aware. And if the column names aren't there, you'll lose the data that was in your source. But it will prompt you and warn you saying, we can't match all these columns. Are you sure you still want to move that? Nope, it gets rid of it completely. And don't try it with OneNote files. This blog post here throws out a big old warning. You try to move a OneNote file, and it will have a big old hissy fit. Best way to move OneNote files is through the OneNote interface. When you go to the properties of your OneNote, you can change location. That's how you would want to move a OneNote file. Microsoft Forms. Anybody using Microsoft Forms yet? A couple of us? Cool. So there is an external sharing option now in Microsoft Forms that Dave may or may not mention in the sharing talk. It's fairly new. So now you can control whether or not your forms can be anonymously accessed, or if it has to be only within the organization. And Microsoft integration into PowerPoint, this is currently in development, so it's kind of an early announcement that it's coming, but you'll be able to integrate forms into your PowerPoint slides for quiz-based interactions. Still not 100% sure what the best use case is there, but it's coming. You probably have seen this already. This blew up the internet for a little bit. OneDrive for Business now has its own file restore option. So at any point in time over the last 30 days, you can jump back to a previous backup of your file. So if your files get ransomed or corrupted or you delete it by accident or anything else, you can go back and grab that up to 30 days old, which is really nice in today's day with malware and all that nonsense. This started rolling out January 22nd. They said over a course of a few weeks, so we should all have this now. Has anybody used this yet, tried it? Cool. All right. I encourage you all to try that this evening or tomorrow and see if it really works. Any U.S. government tenants? Awesome. There usually is, but they didn't show up today. Okay. A whole new List of apps and services are available for the U.S. government tenants. This link down here has a detailed view of the roadmap for the government stuff. If you're interested. I don't know. New ways to use apps. Teams. Teams had a big update 2 weeks ago, I think. I'm at a client now where we're doing a Slack versus Teams assessment, and we're going to train people on Teams, and then Microsoft released this update, and I had to redo a lot of my training material because screenshots changed, processes changed, and it was a welcome change, but it kind of took us off guard. But we're okay now. So Teams, some of the big updates here is that there's now apps available. So before, the key app area would have been the connectors and tabs. But now there's apps that can integrate in your conversation feed. So this top right option here is a conversation that you hit this little ellipsis menu here, and that gives you all the apps available, and then you can push data from an app into a conversation thread, which is really nice. So if you're married to Trello and you haven't committed to Planner yet, which I would argue is a poor decision, use Planner, you can post Trello cards into your conversations now in Teams. The App Store also, I don't have a screenshot of the App Store. There's a whole new App Store. There's a new ellipsis on the left, if you've noticed that, which is kind of your personal apps. So this is everything that's specific to you. When you go to Planner, you see all of your tasks assigned to you across all teams. So big update there, because you used to have to leave Teams to go to Planner to get your tasks. Now you can just stay within Teams and get all of your tasks. And now there's a command bar similar to Slack, where you can do quick typing to kind of jump around Teams and use some of the functionality in Teams. How many are actually using Teams now in the real day-to-day? Really? Oh, you all need to use it. Seriously, embrace it. It is wonderful. It really is. It's being designed, it's the hub of Office 365, so you can create, I don't have slides for this, but you can create a workspace, you can connect to other services seamlessly. It is what I've wanted of SharePoint for many, many, many long years. And they're doing it really well. How many of you use Slack? House. One. Yammer? Other social network in-house? Anyone using Workplace by Facebook? Yeah, okay. So seriously, take a look at Teams. It is a fantastic tool, fantastic feature of Office 365. More on Teams. I was honestly expecting a lot more people to raise their hands, and this would be all cool. But they've released an app that you can install into Teams that will help you build apps for Teams. And this app service allows you to kind of build everything that you would need to create a custom tab, or to create a connector or a bot. For most of us, this doesn't apply because we're not developers, but be aware it's here, and be aware that your development team can create these connectors and other features for Teams pretty easy now. It's kind of a guided process. As you can see on the right here, I want to build an information card, and then it gives you the code to build that with. So it's a WYSIWYG editor, basically, for integrating with Teams. And one more update for Teams. Nope, there's two more. Microsoft Flow. Any of you using Flow? Cool. Next month, we'll be talking about Flow and Power Apps. Right now, with this big update from Teams, there's now Flow integration. So not only can you run flows and connect with Teams, but you can get to your flows through Teams. So I can hit that ellipsis on the right-hand side, and that'll get me to all my flows. And it looks just like the website. It's basically an iframe for the most part. But I can also get to all my approvals. So if you're using flows for manager approvals and all that, they can get to it through Teams now. They don't have to leave Teams and go to another website. Everything can be done inside of Teams. I think you all should be on Teams by now. So there's a blog post that came out, 9 tips for meeting with Teams. I'm not going to cover all 9. I think I have 5 in here. They now allow anonymous join into Teams meetings, which is big. Previously, you had to have a licensed O365 account to get into a meeting. Now you can just share it, and anybody with an email address can get into your O365 meeting. So this kind of fills that gap that Skype for Business was providing, being able to collaborate and have meetings with external users. You can now do all that within Teams. Anybody, Gmail accounts, Yahoo accounts, doesn't matter. It doesn't make them log in. It just makes them enter in like what's your name, like WebEx would. Just basic information, and then you're in the meeting. Eventually, yeah. Yeah. There's no recording yet in Teams. There's now a lobby there. You can mute people, and actually Teams now, after you hit, I think the threshold is 5 people, it auto mutes everybody who comes in. So if you're in a small team, it doesn't mute people. If you're having a larger meeting, then it auto mutes people, which is nice, which just shuts people up. You don't hear dogs barking, all that. And Teams meetings is now doable with just the browser. So Edge and Chrome, you don't need to download an add-in, you don't need to install anything, you just go there and it's a web client. And it works great in Edge and Chrome. So that makes the meeting experience a lot lighter, and your users, the people you're inviting, don't have to think, do I want to install an add-in or anything like that. It does support control, so you can allow other people to control your screen. When that happens, you actually see their mouse with their icon on it and your mouse with your icon on it. So you both actually control the screen at the same time, which is kind of nice because you can see where they're clicking and everyone can still see where you're clicking. I never like it when they take over my screen and I can't do anything. You have to like WebEx makes you triple click, I think, for it to, yeah. Right, yeah, and then Skype for Business is even worse.
It's one cursor, but
yeah.
Both can control it.
And then finally, thank you, Arthur. And finally, it's built in that if you forget to unmute yourself during a meeting, it'll actually come up and say you're muted, stop talking. Like you need to unmute yourself, which is nice because I've done that more than enough times. You sit there and tell like 3 sentences and everyone's ignoring you and you're like getting frustrated and you realize you're muted. Teams helps with that, which is awesome. Anybody using Planner? Same people. All right. Cool. So for those of you not using Planner, why not? I just want to try to understand this. Why not? Not what you're saying you do.
No, I'm not.
Okay. It is spammy. Why else? Anybody else? Anybody else want to share why you're not on Planner? Waterfall. Okay, that's fair. Okay, cool. So I'm a huge fan of Planner, not because it's the Microsoft stack, but because I've spent 6 weeks comparing Planner to Trello, and Trello is kind of the industry leader, and Planner is right there next to it now, especially with the most recent round of updates here. Planner has a schedule view, so you can see a calendar view of all your tasks and just drag and drop tasks. Makes it really easy for a Scrum Master or a PM to manage the board with start dates and the due dates. You can group and filter now, which is a lot more intuitive. You can group by who it's assigned to. You can group by the labels, the color labels. You can group by the status. You can group by bucket, and you can group by date. And the date is things that are past due, things that are due today, things that are due this week, and then later. So it kind of will give you a quick dashboard view of what tasks are we behind on and what's due this week that we need to be focused on. You do get due date notifications, talking about being kind of spammy. They've added more notifications to it. And they've announced this idea of an iCalendar, which allows you to pull this calendar view into your personal Outlook. So you can see all of your tasks on your own Outlook calendar, which will help you manage your time better amongst meetings and all that. You can see everything that's going on with your life. Anybody using Power Apps? Okay, cool. This is just a big stupid update that I'm super happy about, is that you can now use SQL views in Power Apps. If you don't know what a SQL view is, that's okay. But this wasn't supported for a while, and you would have to take all these pieces of data in the Power App and smash it together yourself, and then hope you did it right. Now it supports that, so SQL's handling the view, SQL's handling the mashup, and then Power Apps is just pulling that as a data source. It's a lot more intuitive. And finally, we have the training center. This is not necessarily an update, but just something I would like to share, that Microsoft has this great resource. There's the URL down there. And across the top, each one of those icons goes to really simple 4 to 5 minute videos about the product, from intro videos to how-to videos. And this section here, these are predefined templates that you can download in Word files that are quick reference guide for your users. So you can download these, throw your logo on it instead, maybe tweak it a little bit, and then you have quick reference guides to pass out to all of your users across PowerPoint, Word, and Outlook. So this is a great resource available. I highly recommend it. And hey, Teams is there. And maybe watch a few videos, encourage yourself to dive into Teams. Cool. That's all we have for Office 365 updates. We are ready for the main event. Mr. Dave Feldman, come on up.
Thanks.
For those of you, this is your first time, we usually do have a sponsor, or we try to get a sponsor. We just don't have one this month. So they'd be doing a little dance for you guys right now and trying to sell their product. Cool. Is that still streaming correctly?
Cool. So since there isn't a sponsor, I've got M&Ms that say sharing is caring, or have my Twitter handle on it, or my name, or some of them actually have my face as scary as that is. There was a Groupon deal on it, and I couldn't resist, so. Grab some M&Ms and figured that's never a bad way to start off. Can everyone hear me okay? Are we good? How about now? Can you guys hear me okay? Do I need the mic? Are we happy? Awesome. Candy makes it all better, right? That's me. My name's Dave. I have been doing SharePoint for longer than 2 out of the 3 girls have been around, I guess. So those are my wife and kids. When I'm not doing SharePoint, I'm probably hanging out with them. I'm probably doing SharePoint. I like to always throw a couple pictures in here. Basic kind of point of this slide is you can reach me anywhere. So if you have questions, you want to reach out and talk and chat, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on Twitter. You can go check out my blog, which I need to go put about 10 posts on. So it's been a little dormant, but I've got a bunch of backlog that should get out there in the next couple weeks. So if you have questions about this, want to talk, I'm around after, or reach out to me if you want to just separately hang out, have a conversation. Totally a cool thing to go do at any time. So I figured today let's kind of start by talking a little bit about sharing and kind of balancing some of the need for IT to have control around some of it with some of the desire to make it really easy and consumer friendly for folks to be able to share. So on the consumer side, right, we've got to make it easy for people. Myself an intro first. I'm responsible for SharePoint, OneDrive, Yammer, Teams, kind of our whole collab stack. A company called Shire. It's about 20,000 people around the world, biotech focused. And our users, if you make it too hard for them, they're going to find another way to go get their job done. Everyone has a credit card. Everyone can go off and get a Google Drive or a Dropbox or personal OneDrive or any of these different systems. So there's a definite expectation of, hey, I've got work to do. I power the business. I make money for you. I need to be able to store things. I need to be able to share things. File size shouldn't matter. I want to be able to share it with people in the company, with people outside the company. The security side isn't really number one on their list. So things that I'm thinking about, right, on the IT side, I've got to make sure that if we have compliance requirements, those are taken care of. I want to make sure that we're not leaking sensitive data to people. I want to be able to control who we're sharing stuff to. All of the things so that IT security doesn't come by and say, hey, I hate you, SharePoint. I hate you, OneDrive. We're not going to run that service. We're going to run something different. right? So trying to balance out the two sides there, right? Put together a good story that lets us bring all of those together in one place. My audio totally did not work on this, sadly. There was supposed to be some audio underneath it, but no audio, that's fine. I had this great Rothy kids song called like the Sharing Song. And it was going to be awesome because it underlays this whole kind of great theme of sharing is awesome. You should share with your friends because then they have some and you have some and we should all share and get along together. Great. So, by the way, I didn't tell you guys. Feel free to ask lots of questions. I cut out a bunch of stuff. I can answer questions as we go. But if some slides are quick, it's because I might want to get a drink afterwards with anyone who wants to. So I figured we wouldn't make this go till midnight. That would be bad. General point. Lots of people are sharing. Sharing is important. You need to share with people who are inside. You need to share with people who are outside. Project that I work on probably has 12 different independent people who all work on it. How do we communicate? They aren't all in my AD. They don't all have access to everything. Meanwhile, I've got to make sure, and IT security cares a lot about making sure that we're not leaking important data, that I'm not downloading, patient clinical trial data onto grandma's PC and, getting that stolen out of my house because it's a shiny new iMac 5K. Make up weird scenarios. So make up your own, they'll be better. So, you need to worry about MDs. Why do they care? Right? So there's lots of stuff that goes bump into that. Every single year, how many people have ever had a credit card compromised? Woo-hoo. All right, awesome. So lots of stuff, right? Bad actors in the world. Some of this is due to weak passwords. There are lots of different sides of the security story. MFA is really important. Multi-factor authentication. Please go do it. That's not the purpose of this talk, but lots of bad things. We want to design our sharing strategy in a way that's going to be safe. It's going to help protect our IP. It's going to protect the stuff in our company, but it is also going to let us get our jobs done. So Microsoft gives us one or two tools to be able to go do that. And obviously, this slide makes it super important to use Win to be able to secure them. It's super cool. One admin console, one SKU to buy, you're good to go, right? So you want to cross the top there. In E1, we've got different choices inside here. Business, a whole bunch of extra SKUs to that. Next to enterprise mobility and security layers on a whole bunch of security and compliance features. We've got Premium 1, we've got Premium 2, different versions of those are included with different parts of the EMS stuff. It is clear as well, right? There's nothing complicated to do here. Just go ahead, turn a credit card, we'll be good to go, right? So I'm going to do what I can to be able to take the stuff inside SharePoint, where most of our data is stored, where most of our collaboration happens, and try to talk through three basic principles that I think will let us be able to securely share data inside our company as well as outside, if we just kind of build out those three different areas. And again, if you have questions along the way, stop me, ask. If this isn't hitting what you were looking for, please, I want to make sure that we give you the data that you want to be able to go out and feel like you're good with all this stuff. So I'm thinking it starts with architecture. SharePoint, how is that set up? And we'll talk about that. How did they think about that? How was that designed? What are our constraints? What does it look like from an end user perspective? How do I, as a person who's sharing, go off and do it? Because there's some new screens in there, and they're different, and a lot of people find them confusing and say, what should I be doing? What's actually happening behind the scenes? And that's probably where I'm going to spend a big chunk of time in the middle of this. And at the end, what are all the controls that I have as an admin to be able to enforce my company's policy, and which one should I and shouldn't I go choose? Hopefully that should be enough that we can still get out and go grab a beer at the end if anyone wants to. Sir? What's that?
Beer after.
Oh, beer after, yeah. Yeah, I found out that there's like some fight night in Lowell for like amateur boxing, people who haven't been in more than 2 or 3 fights in their entire life, but it started at 6:30, so nothing else to do afterwards. That'd be awesome. So SharePoint architecture. Going back to how SharePoint works on-prem, I wanted to kind of talk about the hierarchy of stuff that exists inside this thing called a SharePoint farm. At the top we've got web apps. Inside there we have site collections, and then we have these things called sites or SP webs that just keep going all the way down. And I'm going to kind of talk about what each one of those are, because it plays a good piece in securing SharePoint and understanding what we're doing when we're sharing. So at the top, like back on-prem when you have servers, and how many people are living on-prem today? A couple of folks have some stuff on-prem. So it's good to know where we kind of came from, right? So a web app was basically an IIS virtual directory, like a separate web server. It's got a separate Windows process. So just like if I popped up Task Manager and I looked at Excel or Word or PowerPoint or Outlook or any of those things, there was a process that was running SharePoint inside there for each of those web apps. So if you had one for like, my collaboration sites and one for and a different name that you were using for your intranet and a different one that you were using for external, those were all different Windows executables. So you had different process isolation. A good way to be able to divide all those up, and that's not something that we do inside SharePoint Online. So in Office 365, all of it goes under a single thing. Tenantname.sharepoint.com is what you're going to see in terms of that sharing. You will notice that all your OneDrive stuff is tenantname-my. So that's physically in a different, quote, web app if you want to think about it that way. But that's not a concept in SharePoint Online. So next level down is looking at site collections. So rules about site collections, and again, kind of the architecture side of this all came out of on-prem and hasn't really changed since 2003. So a site collection lives in a single database, everything within it. So as it grows, that's all living in one database. So if you put your entire company, every single collaboration site for your company in there, it's all running in one database. Think about that from a backup and restore perspective. Think about that from the perspective of there's a recycle bin that hangs out at that site collection, and that you have site collection administrators. And if you make someone a site collection admin, they're going to have full rights to everything inside that site collection. So site collections are a really big deal in that they are a security boundary in Office 365. So when we think about sharing and sharing files and data internally or externally inside a site collection, good to have things of the same kind of sensitivity level. In fact, with Office 365, with SharePoint Modern Team Sites, I can assign a data classification on my team site. So every time I create a new Modern Team site, and I'm just going to go maybe hit that real quick, just so that you see what I'm talking about. Did that adjust correctly? You guys can see my screen maybe, or no? Duplicate is an important concept. Wonderful. Awesome. When I change resolution, it's going to... Got it. Thank you. All right, I'll get good at this. So when I go and say I want to create a brand new site, create a new team site, each time I do this, this is making a new site collection inside SharePoint. So this is what we're talking about. You can actually set this up so that every site collection, every time I create one of these groups, I'm assigning a data classification to it that says, hey, this is going to be internal, this is confidential, this is super duper secret, or Microsoft uses terms like high business impact, medium business impact, or low business impact. Pick whatever the right stuff is, but all of those things and all of those data sensitivity security levels are all designed at a site collection level, because that really is the security boundary inside SharePoint. I'm betting I need to reshare again. No, we made it? Share a window?
No, share.
Okay. Ah, sweet. I get it now. Thank you. Another important thing about these things, within a site collection, that is where I control whether or not sharing is turned on or off for that group. I can't go to anything below a site collection and say, no external sharing here. Yes or no. So that sharing capability is actually a flag on the site collection itself that says, can I share yes or no inside here? If there's a tenant level control, you can turn it off for everybody. But if you want to be granular, break stuff into the site collections. That really is kind of a big important area. So subsites, these webs, this concept, how many people have created a subsite in the past? Most people? All right, most people. So think of it as your Russian nesting dolls, right? It's a box within a box within a box within a box within a box. You can make subsites that go, I think it's literally thousands of levels deep that you can do. Please don't. I've got a site collection that has 1,178 subsites within it. It's awful. It's called HGT. It stands for Human Genetic Therapies, which was apparently the name of a business unit that used to exist about 6 years before I joined the company. And everything for that business unit is in one giant site collection. So that business unit doesn't exist, but yet that is where the IT help desk metrics get delivered from some third-party company that is literally 7 levels deep inside there. And all the rest of the IT stuff has moved out, but inside that tiny little box is this super active site that every single month our help desk metrics get delivered there. And of those 1,000, plus subsites, there's a scattering of them that are active. There's about 100 that are active, but I can't get rid of that, and breaking it apart becomes a really, really big deal. It's going to share a bunch of stuff in common with everything inside its site collection, including a sharing capability, including security groups, including templates, branding assets. There's a bunch of stuff that's all shared inside there. So there were reasons why people created a lot of these, because it made it easy to have common look and feel across it. It made it easy to be able to say, I want to go search across everything inside that site collection. There's a lot of challenges that came with them as well. Yeah.
Can you clarify?
Yeah.
Do you still have URL?
No. Yeah, no, you don't. Those went away a while ago. So yeah, you can go pretty deep. Forget the levels. I don't know if there's actually a limit and bound on the number of levels within, but I mean, I have ones that go 27 levels deep. I haven't written like a recursive script to go make them. I would never have made them 27 levels deep, and then the folders start from there, right?
Okay. I thought there was some factor of 2.
There used to be on that. I haven't heard about it in a couple of years, so I don't know. It's a good question. If HTTP has an upper length on how long it can be. That's a good question. I can find out for you. What is it? 400. No, it's more than 128. I think we'll look it up afterwards. Yeah, it's very long because I know I've got 27 levels deep right now, and then libraries and folders after that. But we can go take a look. It may differ by browser too. It's a good question. So in terms of kind of recommendations from a sharing perspective, right? Remember that site collections are the primary boundary. Why do I say that? Because I have worked with lots of companies in the past who said, this site collection is where we're going to do all of our external sharing. And then inside there, they created a separate subsite for every single one of the partners or every company that they wanted to go share data with. And then someone 3 levels deep inside there said, hey, I want to share this with everyone on the site collection. They added the members group on it. And, stupidly, people can accidentally make a mistake and, overshare. So in order to prevent oversharing, it's good to think about site collections as being that boundary. You can also flip on or off that sharing setting inside there. Some other neat stuff that you can do within site collections, you can whitelist and blacklist domains, saying, hey, within this box, you can only share with these 3 companies. Again, just additional controls we can do inside here to make it a little bit better. It's pretty well aligned with modern SharePoint. If you look at modern team sites and you look at modern communication sites, all of those are only available at the root of a site collection. So I can't go into a site collection and create a subsite that's a communication site. I can't go into a subsite and create a subsite which is a modern team site with a group. All of those things are created at the site collection level, so it's pretty well aligned. How many site collections you can have? Thousands and thousands and thousands. Like
500,000 per 10.
500,000? I forgot if it was, yeah, it's a lot. How do you remember all this? There's a lot of
It
it.
up like this.
Oh, it's. I know I have it on a page, you know. So we talked about the fact that SubSites used to be good for some stuff. HubSites are coming soon, and they have the ability to give you some of those things in a flat world. So basically what a HubSite is, just to talk about it for 2 seconds, is an ability to be able to link a bunch of site collections together. So if I've got a site collection I'm doing external sharing on that's related to my finance team, I can still connect it up with my finance hub, and it will have the same navigation across the top, this gray bar where you see it says HR across the top. I can have that shared navigation going across multiple site collections. I can have a shared theme across multiple site collections. I can have a shared search scope across multiple site collections. I can roll up news. So all the stuff that used to drive people to make subsites, a lot of that gets mitigated by HubSite. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in to kind of finish up the concept of why site collections are really the good kind of foundation for the stuff that we're looking at. Make sense? You guys ready to move on to end user perspective? Other questions about kind of the architecture stuff? Cool. So we're going to talk about a couple different things, really grouped into 2 areas. One of them is if I have something very specific I want to share, maybe a folder, maybe a file. The other one is if I want to do a long-term collaboration with someone. I'm working with someone and they are really a member of my team. So one of them, here's a file, I want to go share it with Bob. I want to go share it with Mike. The other one is, hey, the 3 of us are working together. We are putting together this group. It's called the Office 365, Boston Office 365 User Group. And every single month we're putting together speakers and slides and social media, and we're all working and collaborating together. But those are kind of 2 different scenarios, and we'll look at the 2 ways that we can go enable those different things. So some of these slides, by the way, I borrowed. You'll see why 2 slides forward. There's just way too much work to create it, so I borrowed them from a couple different places. You'll see. So easiest first one is I want to go through and I want to go share something externally. So I've got something that I need to go send you. So I'm going to be working with Vanessa. Is that right? Yes. So I'm working with Vanessa, and she says, hey, Dave, can you give me a link to that presentation that you did? And I say, no problem, Vanessa. I don't care if she has an Office 365 tenant. I don't care if she has an account. I just want to send her a link to my presentation. The whole goal of it is to make it super easy. I don't want to make her sign in. I don't want to make her do anything else. And if she wants to forward it to 4 other people, that's totally cool. So that's an anyone shareable link. So anyone who has that link has the ability to go off and get to that presentation for this deck. That's super useful, right? So if Dimitri had one of those with the kind of first slides that Dave walked through at the beginning of the session, he could just email me that link. Now I can go off and get it, grab it, incorporate it in. So that's kind of the perfect use case for that. It's a link for anyone who has it. So the way I create it when I go to send a link is I just go through and I say anyone who can view a link, and it's green. It's wide open for the world. And inside here, I can choose, does the person have the ability to edit it? Yes or no? And I can make that link expire. So if I want it to only be good for 2 weeks, good to go. And there's actually an ability to set a policy across your entire environment that says the longest someone can choose is this period of time. So someone could go through and say, hey, you've got 90 days to use it at our tenant level, and then I'm sending it to Bob, and I said, Bob, you've got 7 days. That's all you get. So you have that control as an end user right here. So this is really neat. I like the term because it sounds way more secure than anonymous. People sometimes call these anonymous links. I think that's not really a good name for it. I love the name. It's a transferable, revocable secret key. It just makes it sound much more secure. But it is kind of true. It's not anonymous. I can't send you, here's the URL of the file, and you go off and get to it. The only way you get to the file is if you have this really ugly looking URL with a giant key incorporated in it. So anyone who has the key can get into my house. That's pretty much what it is. And you are responsible for who you give that key to. So it's not really anonymous. It's here's the key. I give you the key. You're welcome to go to my house. Feel free to stop by. You're good to go.
For absolute clarity on
Yeah.
that, though, the
The link is the key. Exactly right. The link is the key. So let's go look at it. And this is the slide where I said I would not recreate this. Yes. It is so that's one of my favorite things, right? Yeah, let's break it apart, right? So let's break apart this word, because the word anonymous sounds super scary, right? Anyone can go get your data, no problem. So here's the two pieces of it. It is transferable. So I can transfer it. I can say, Mike Dixon, take my key. It is revocable. I can say, Mike Dixon, that key no longer works. I changed my locks. So it's not anonymous. It is a key, and anyone with the key can get into my house. It's not a key that's specific to Mike. It's a transferable key. And I can revoke it at that point. That's exactly right. So I'm not saying every link that I send, in fact, this isn't something I use very often, but it is a really important thing to be able to do, because if Dimitri wanted to send me those slides at the beginning of this session, we waited for Dave's email to go send a big attachment over Wi-Fi inside. Here it took a long time. He walked over, signed into my PC, downloaded the file himself, and opened the PowerPoint deck. But if we had a transferable, revocable secret key on Skype, just put it up there, and then we're good to go.
we have a question from an online user.
No, because they are not required to log in. Yeah.
That's why we use.
Yep.
So we know.
It's one of the other options we're going to talk about. My goal for tonight was to make sure you understand what all the options are and when you might want to use each one. I will not stand in front of you and say, send out everything with an anyone link, because you shouldn't. But at the same time, if I'm going to go send out a press release, I'm going to send out my brand guidelines, I'm going to go send out something where it doesn't matter. Here's something that happens to live on our website, but you know what? Here's the editable version of it. It's not something that I'm worried about. I can absolutely go do that. Yeah, it does.
As you go through this, can you clarify?
Both. Across all the stuff that we're looking at right now. Yeah, it's the same common sharing user interface, which is why I figured it was worth spending time to go walk through it and talk about it, because it's all of this, and it's significantly different than it was a year and a half ago. You cannot share it for longer than your tenant admin allows you to. So if your tenant admin says 30 days is the longest that an anonymous link is good for, 30 days later your anonymous link is gone. So that's an important control that you have at a tenant level and at an end user level, to be able to say, hey, no, you know what, I'm sending you this, it's good till tomorrow. Go get the link. So how does this thing work? It gets sent. I pass it to Mike. Mike passes it to Vanessa. Vanessa passes it to the pizza guy. Whoever has it, internal or external, can pass that link around. Why is this important? It works just like email. I send you an attachment. You forward the attachment. They forward it to someone else. Think of this, quote, anonymous link as exactly like an email. I don't know who the email got passed to, but it's a really good kind of familiar way to think about these things. And it's a little bit less scary than thinking, I publish it out and the whole world can go see it. Guaranteed. Whoever gets it can open it, just like an attachment. This is a neat feature. So I can find out when an anonymous link is being created as an admin at a tenant level. I can say, tell me every single time someone's going off and making one of these, because it's important. I want to know when stuff is being said, so that if I see merger and acquisition strategy going out, as an anonymous link, I say, all right, that's not a good sign. I should probably make a follow-up email phone call with Ben Walters on here, because that's a concerning thing, You can certainly do that. Is there a trigger and hook with flow? So I will answer that in two ways. Natively out of the box, there is not. There is an ability to have all sharing communication go to an email address or set of them. I do have a flow that powers off of that particular email being received. So yeah, not directly, but easy enough to go do. All right, so if you don't like sending all of your stuff via email or attachments that can be forwarded to other people, the next level is an internal only shareable link. So whoever has it, it works unless you're outside the company. So this one's blue. Only people in whatever your tenant name is who have this link can view and edit. And it's going to work exactly like your anyone link, except only people at Shire, Contoso, mycompany.com, whatever it is. So if you want people within there to go do it, you've got an option that says, do I want editing, yes or no? So it can be read-only, or it can be editable, but it will work for everyone. It can be passed around the company. You try to send it outside to your buddy at Microsoft, it's not going to go work, right? They'll get blocked. Can, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't say it yet because it's in the admin control section, but yes, you can. You have control over these. So what is this one, right? So I love the definition because the definition piece lets you break it down, right? It's transferable, it's revocable, it's still a secret key. However, all users need to be signed into an account. It's not anonymous, and that account needs to be for my organization. So anyone who's not part of Contoso, we'll just use that word because it's easy, can't go view that link. Now my favorite slide that I didn't want to recreate. So I can pass it around as much as I want on the inside. Someone forwards it out to someone who's outside my company, it stops working. Really easy. Any questions? You guys good? Interesting question. I think it's probably a good, so let me answer it this way. The sharing link will not change based on the DLP. However, I believe you can have DLP in your Exchange routing rules that will block stuff based on DLP hits, is my understanding, but I want to lean on the Exchange guy.
That is correct.
And the emails are visibly different for those anonymous links versus non-anonymous links. So you could actually handle that. Now, for me, the ideal, which I can't do today, is to say I want to turn off anonymous everywhere except for these two site collections. One of them is called public relations. The other one is called this, right? I want someone to come to IT and have a conversation with me if they think that their site collection needs to be someplace where they can share stuff without people logging in. Can't do that on a site collection by site collection level basis. Yeah. And not today. It'd be awesome if you could. I'd love that. You can do tenant level policies. So all policies around sharing today are, other than external access, right, are kind of managed at that level. So next level down, specific people. So I'm trying to lock down my data even further, right? I want to make sure that not anyone inside my organization is going to be able to go view it. Only these 2 or 3 named people are able to go view it. Now, has anyone in this room heard of broken inheritance? People don't talk about it a lot anymore, right? So the general assumption is, hey, I create a modern team site, I add people to the group, you have access to everything inside the group, and the UI makes that kind of the default gesture, right? As if we're working together and we're in a group, that Office 365 group is in the members. It is going to have rights to everything. People aren't breaking inheritance as much unless they need to for something specific. So if I have some specific thing and I want to make sure that everyone who gets this link that I share is going to be able to go view it, I've got the ability to do that. And that can be inside or outside. So I want to send a link, and I'm going to generate this link, this secret revocable link, right, that only works for specific people. So this time I grab the gold, orangey, yellow kind of guy at the bottom for specific people. I can choose whether or not you want to turn on editing or not. So what is this? This is a non-transferable revocable secret key, right? I can't transfer it from one person to another. Whoever gets the key, this is Mike's key, this is Vanessa's key, this is Dimitri's key, it only works for the three of them. If you are not one of the three of them, you cannot use that key. You may have other rights to the file, but you can't use that key. So even if you are a member of my team site, even if you're an owner of my team site, if they forward you an email that has that link in it, that link's going to be broken for you because that key will not work for you. They have to be signed in, and your account has to be one of those. So things that are interesting inside here, I can't share that link to anyone, but I could use an internal or an external person inside that list of specific people.
By default, forward it to an
If you allow, let me say that a different way. If you allow that invite to be accepted by, this is a complicated scenario, so let me break it apart. So I want to first say it back again for the people on the phone. I send an email, I send a sharing invitation to someone with an external access, and the question was, they can then send it on to someone else. So the answer is, it depends. And that's why I say this is kind of a complicated scenario. If they are signing in with an account, if the account you shared it with is an Office 365 account, it's an organizational account, or it's a Microsoft account, then it needs to be redeemed by one person. Once it's redeemed, it's associated with that account. So in other words, you send it to me at my Shire account, it knows that is an org account, and then it has to be redeemed by one person. Now, if you sent it to dave22@gmail.com, that happens to forward into my Gmail inbox, that isn't an org account, and that isn't a Microsoft account, so it's going to do something called one-time password. So with one-time password, it's going to send me a password at my Gmail account every single time I try to go access that file, rather than making me go associate it. So sometimes is the real answer, and not as much as it used to be. And you also have a policy to prevent them from forwarding it and making only the account that you shared it with being the ones who can redeem it, which is in our admin section. I don't know if I answered your question, because
I want to talk later about the policy.
Yeah, it's slightly tricky inside there, but yeah, let's talk about it in the policy section about preventing people from forwarding sharing invites. But it used to be, yes, you could always do that without the policy. Now it's you can do that if you have an account. If you don't have an account, then you can't share it no matter what, because we're going to keep sending one-time passwords back to your email address. I know that's complicated. Did that come across enough? So specific people link, right? I go off and I send it to this specific person. You see, I sent it to someone who is outside my company. It works for them. They can't forward it to anyone else. Had I sent it to someone inside my company, it would only work for them. They can't forward it to anyone else. Only the named people can go off and do it on a specific people link. So if you don't have a guest account, that last bullet is actually kind of that last point we were talking about. Then you're going to get a emailed password every single time. If you have a guest account, then yes, you could forward it without that policy in place to some other guest account and be able to go redeem it one time. Once it's redeemed, only that user can go log in. And in fact, you'll see the account that redeems that invite as being the person who it shared with. Good so far? That was probably the most complicated one we've done. Yeah.
So behind the scenes, if you share a file with somebody that doesn't your group membership, that kind of give it a good.
And I know I've got to reshare. I'm doing less demos knowing that I've got to reshare each time. This is a good one. Are you guys good? Can you see? Are we happy?
Not yet.
Tell me when you're happy. This sharing? Are you good?
Good.
Awesome. So I'm going to take a file, in a random document library. I'm going to pull up the properties. So if I look at who has access right now, 4 groups have access. I can go add people. If I look at manage access, you can see I've got 2 owner groups. I've got a visitors group and I've got a members group, and that's the only people who have access to it. So I'm going to go through here, go back, and let's go share this. I'm going to go make a specific people link, and I'm going to say Boston Music Dave at gmail.com. It knows who I am. Let's go make it up. At Boston Music Dave. What day is today? 15? At gmail.com. It doesn't know who that is because that's not a real address. All right, so I'm not allowing external sharing on this particular site collection. I'll do an internal one. It's fine. So let's just go through and say I'm going to make an edit link for anyone inside my tenant. That's great. And I'm going to go send this to myself. Actually, let's just copy the shareable link. There's my link. I copied it. Now, I don't know if you noticed what happened. You saw some movement over here inside the pane. So if you look at it, there's now actually a 5th item that shows up inside the manage access. So I can see here's my members, visitors, and owners groups. And at the top, I actually see here's my link. So I could go through and I could copy that link. I can also revoke that link. I can get rid of it right here. So what it's done is it's actually said the permission is what it was, plus this link also has access as well. And I can see only people in the SharePoint masters with this link can edit this item. So it's pretty explicit about what it's actually doing if you go and you look at it. Now you asked me a specific question. You said, does that break inheritance? If I click advanced, it will bring you over to the old version of this screen. And the old version of this screen says this document has unique permissions. So yes, officially, you have broken inheritance. Does it matter? Does anyone care? Not at all, because it's not something that's super impactful anymore. People don't actually talk about it. It doesn't even say that inside the UI, right? It's only inside the old UI. When you go over to advanced, you even see it. Make sense? Because you're not actually managing it and saying this person and this person and this person and this person. You're saying here's a link, and that link has access, not the individual people with that edit link. If you re-inherit, the link disappears. It's a good question. So if I say delete unique permissions right here, inside the classic experience, see what happens when I go over here. And refresh it. So this is Cloud App Security click-through. And Cloud App Security click-through. Good luck. Gone. So yeah, that's exactly right. So yes, you're officially, quote, breaking inheritance, but does it matter? Not at all. They don't even show it that way inside the UI anymore.
So conversely.
Yeah. Yep. So let's go do it. But I think the main way that people are going to actually do this is you're going to say, hey, I'm in a group that's got 4 people. I'm going to go add someone else to it. I'm going to go manage these at the site level rather than having 20 levels of permission. Sure. And by adding them to the group, you'll immediately get it. That's the common use case. If I lock down this library and I'm not doing it with groups and I'm adding individual users all over the place to different libraries, then no, you won't, because you'd have broken inheritance. You would be breaking it then. But I mean, the kind of concept is you're not adding individual users all over. You create a sharing link, you adjust the sharing link to the right policy, you send it out. So if I'm using, anytime I do this internally, right? So if I'm sending something to my boss, I take this, I say copy link. Only people inside the SharePoint masters can edit it and view it, copy the link, send it. Anyone who's part of my tenant can go off and edit or view. So I'm not going to break inheritance 50 times. I've got a transferable key. Whoever has that key can go off and do it. I'm not going to have that same proliferation of a million different permission variations in different places. That's kind of the concept, to maybe simplify some of this stuff down so that you don't have 50 different levels of permissions in 50 different places. And make sure that I can get back over to... Are we up in full screen over there for you? Let me get there on... This is awesome. I want to share my secondary monitor. It was easier this time. Cool. So if I send this and I want to reshare it, I can actually get notifications when someone else reshares as well. So I can see what was shared. I can see who shared it. So in this particular case, I can see that Ben, who's outside of my company, went through and he also went through and shared a document that I had shared with him. And I can get that, and I've got a thing right here where I can open it and go look at it, or I can click one button to go remove the access that that external person gave. So I share it with someone outside my tenant. They take it and they play hot potato. They pass it on and share it to another specific person. Because I allowed that person to go off and do it, I didn't block him from resharing it. I still get alerted about it because I'm the original owner of that. And I have one-click button to be able to go off and remove their access from it. Yeah.
When you say you're the owner, are you the owner?
I shared it to Ben.
Site administrator?
Nope, I shared it to Ben. I was the guy. So let's use a real world scenario here. I do a specific link, and I say, send this to Mike Dixon. You know, that AAD file that we were just looking at. Now you take it, you send it to Dimitri. I'm going to get a note that says, hey, Mike just forwarded that, just reshared that file to Dimitri.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, we're not the
Yes.
group administrator
Yeah,
who had the right.
I would get that. It is whoever does the original sharing
Whoever
is
creates
told
the
about it, the resharing. Exactly.
Okay.
Whether it sends an email or I do, whether they send an email or whether I do. Here's a link. It's the same link that's inside the email, whether you hit share or whether you hit copy link.
Can you create sharing links?
Same link, yeah, exactly. Same link, it's just a different way to go grab it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, let's go. You want me to go do it? It's the same thing. I mean, it's not actually copying it's creating a quote sharing link. When you create the sharing link is literally an account. It's a claim that says anyone who has that key has rights to the file. So now the permissions are I've got it, Vanessa's got it, Bob's got it, and this key. And that's really what the permissions are, right? It's whoever has that key plus those other things is who's got perms to the file. So that's not for anonymous. For anonymous, I don't need any password. So that's actually the next slide, and I kind of like that. So if I send it to someone who doesn't have an account, so I just made up bostonmusicdave22@gmail.com or 15@gmail.com, and that's not a real thing. But if I had a Gmail address at that, and in fact, I've got one that I'm anonymously sending a bunch of different addresses to, so we can do this if you want. Make up an address or have a new address. It's not associated with any account. The way that this is going to work is it's going to give me a link, and I click on the link, and SharePoint pops up a dialog box on this page, right? So I say, specific link, only share it with bostonmusicdave15@gmail.com. When I get it, I get this email that says, here's a link. I click on the link, and it says, please put in your verification code. And it's going to then send a code to bostonmusicdave15@gmail.com. And I'll have to take that code out of my email once it comes in, put it in, and then I can get access to the file. So why did Microsoft do this? Because it used to be that you needed to go off and create what they called a live account or a Microsoft account to be able to go off and access it. So if I send it to someone's Yahoo or AOL or other company that isn't using Office 365, I send it to my doctor and I say, hey, go check out this new thing I put out there. You should go look at it. He's got to go create an account. He's got to set up a password. It probably doesn't have MFA on it. Like, there's a bunch of bad stuff that happens when I'm trying to share with someone who doesn't have Office 365. So instead of any of that bad stuff, it goes through and says, hey, go show me you're really the guy who owns that email address. And I can have a policy on here that says, I want to make you reprove who you are every day. So you can click that link as many times as you want today. You want to click it tomorrow, you're going to show me that you still own that email address. Why? Because I want to make sure you didn't get fired. Today, john@uhaul.com is you. Tomorrow, I want to make sure you're still john@uhaul.com. You still have access to that email address. So I'm verifying your identity every X number of days, whatever I set the policy to be, by sending you a code, and then the link will work for you and only you. It's awesome, right?
It is, because that's one of the...
Yeah.
Because we just need to know...
Right.
Accessing the data.
So this isn't anonymous. This is specific people. It's just specific people who don't happen to have an account. If I have an account, it'll use my account, and that's great because I don't have to go get sent a new code every day to make sure, that it's me. I log into my account, you know who I am. If I don't have an account, this is a great feature. Really, really neat stuff. And you can ask people to prove every 30 days. I still have access to it. Every 1 day, I still have access to it. However often you want to revalidate, they still have access to that email address. Still that person. If you're worried about resharing.
No, I feel like there's 4.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we're talking about it.
And
right?
Right, you can do.
Yep. You can still share with a live account. This is sharing with no account. They call it one-time password is the official. When you share, you type in an email address. If that email address has an account, it will use it. If that email address does not have an account, it will do this. If you are sharing with specific people, so your control...
But it won't find the people. I'm just troubleshooting an issue where people
are help me out.
Typing in an email address.
Yep.
And
So then you are not set in a mode where you're allowing sharing to happen with people who aren't already inside your directory. We'll talk about that when we get to the admin side. That's one of your choices that you have, is you can choose to say, I want to let people share with authenticated users. I want to let people share, we'll start at the top. I want to let people share with not authenticated users, with authenticated users who are already in my directory, and I don't want to let people share with folks who are outside, only us. Those are kind of your four levels. It sounds like you're at level 3 there, where you can only share with people who are in your directory. The next level up lets you share with authenticated users on the outside, whether it's a organization account, because they have Office 365, whether it's a Microsoft account, or whether they don't have an account and they're going to use the one-time password. Yep.
Who does not have.
You got it. Yeah. You have a question next, Jim, or? Oh, cool.
Reiterate.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
There's some challenges with it too. As the sharer, you don't know whether they have an account or not. So you don't know if they're going to get a one-time password or if they're going to use an account because they have an account. So it's totally transparent to you, which is good and bad, right? Like I type in an email address and I know that you're going to be able to get it and log in and get it. Whether you have an account to that address or not, you're going to be able to get to it, which is awesome. I just don't know exactly what your user experience is going to be.
Yeah, can we take?
No, sure.
Yeah. I need to send help doc.
Yeah.
What version?
Send them.
Will there be feedback from me? Actually, on.
For it, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. I mean, that's got to be common feedback, right? Is do I know if the email address that I put in is going to get a one-time password or not? It would be awesome. So things that you should know about it. You can't stop it. You can't turn it off. If I'm allowed to share with people, if they don't have an account, it's going to use a one-time password. So that's just built in. That's how it works. And there's no kill switch that says, sorry, make them go make an account. That's something you should know. Another something you should know with it, not officially multi-factor auth. It's the same factor over and over again, right? I'm saying, go prove you still have access to your email, but I'm not setting up Microsoft Phone authentication with you. I'm not able to do that because the account doesn't actually, there isn't an account, so there's no account stuck inside your Azure AD as a guest. So it's purely for SharePoint only, and there's not a switch to turn it off. It just happens when that person isn't there. It's way easier than it used to be. It makes it a lot easier to be able to go share. But yeah, there's some challenges. It's not perfect yet. Cool? We can talk more about it too. So we're on to the last one. People with existing access. Anyone have any idea what that does?
I mean, that's.
Yeah.
And you told your person.
So I think what you said is exactly right. It is purely a navigational link to go get there. It is the address of that file or that folder, nothing else. It's not a link. It doesn't change permissions. It doesn't add anything. It literally just says, here's a link to go get there. The number one place where I use this is when I'm making a link to a file on my intranet. I don't want it to be an anonymous sharing link that anyone goes and gets. I'm going to go get a URL for a picture because I want to go embed that picture somewhere. I want to go grab the URL of a file because I'm going to use the file viewer web part on a page. Anytime you want to link to the file itself, that's exactly what this is. So no, whoever has access gets access. It has nothing to do with access control. It's literally a link to the file. It's what we used to copy out of the URL bar of the browser. And in fact, in some cases, it still is. But it's literally like if you look at what it gives you exactly a link with a path to go get there. Whoever has rights to that file, it will work for. Whoever doesn't have rights to it, it won't work for. It doesn't make it easier to share. If I copy it and send it in an email and it gets forwarded around to 2 or 3 people, they may or may not have rights to it. There's no way to know. You have rights to it, you have rights to it. If you don't, you don't. My daughter says you get what you get, you don't get upset. You have as many questions as you want.
Can you clarify,
When you say a location link, what do you mean?
based on the hierarchy in a,
Yeah.
in a site?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So when I create a sharing link, what you're actually creating, and we'll go back and forth a couple more times. It's cool. Let's go create one of, first we'll do this. I'm going to go copy this link. Go look at it. Nice and not that big. Shrink that down a little bit. All right. So existing access, right? You can see it's the name of the site, site / the name of the site collection, the document library, folder, the file name, and then a little bit of extra metadata through at the end, right? So it's grabbing exactly the physical location of that file. It's just a pointer to that file where it actually exists. Now I'm going to go share this again, and this time I'm going to go do a view and edit link. So it created my shareable link, my shareable revocable secret key. And I'm going to go do the same thing, except this time maybe I'm going to change my font first before I paste. Or after. As I paste it into my font size. The hardest part of this whole session, right, is making it so you can see what this key says. Sweet. Can you read that? So what did it really do? It really just sent me a key. So it's not actually a pointer to the file. It's not a pointer to the folder. It's literally, if you have this, you have rights to go get to that file. Another good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second.
No. Great question. Let's go take this file, and I'm going to go move this into my presentations folder. Move here. Why answer your question when we can just actually go click on it and find out? Pretty awesome. Makes that move feature that we talked about a whole lot cooler, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so that's probably a really good point. If I moved it into a site collection that didn't support sharing with external people, then that link would break because it's going to reside by the policy of the place that the link lives, for sure. I'm going to reshare monitor 2 real quick, and we're back in business. Do we understand links inside and out now? Anyone in my organization, specific people, whether they have accounts, whether they don't have accounts, I can now share files and folders with the entire world. Last piece that we want to think about from an end user is, what if I want to do long-term collaboration, not just a couple files and folders, I want to go work with them. I want them to actually be a part of my team. So I can, inside the OA, inside Outlook, I can go through and I can add a person on here. If my policy is set the right way, that's going to light up a bunch of stuff for them. It's going to light up things like Teams, to be able to have chat conversations or share all that great stuff that Dave was showing at the beginning. It's going to let them be a part of the email distribution list that's associated with my site. They're actually part of my org. So that's great if you have a bunch of independent people who are working on your team, and you want to make sure that when I send a note to, intranet@contoso.com, it includes those people. You can have them onboarded as part of your team. So what does that look like? That looks like you go into manage the group members inside Outlook. You say add a member, and when I go do that, you can see it shows me all owners and guests. My guests show up under guests. I go put someone in there, and it's actually going to take their org account, and it's going to add it into my Azure Active Directory as a guest account. So if you go and you're an admin and you go into AAD, you can see that email address now got added into your Azure Active Directory as a guest. You can do some fun stuff inside here. You can create a policy that requires MFA for all guests. So you can turn it on so that anyone who you're sharing long-term with will automatically get multi-factor authentication as part of being inside that group. So once I add them, it's going to light up all those experiences. I can go through, I can chat with them in Teams. I can be able to, I do this right now. So if I look inside my Teams client, I'm actually in 4 or 5 different tenants that I participate in stuff in. So I can go be part of those conversations, whether they are a ISV that I'm using some of their software and I'm having support conversations and learning about new features and things like that, or whether it's some other group that is interesting that I'm doing collaboration with. Great way to be able to share and collaborate in a multi-channel kind of way, rather than just files and folders back and forth. Cool? Yeah, you're good. You're totally good. Guest accounts. So we talked about the fact that when I go share one of those people, it's going to go actually add that account into Azure Active Directory. So if I look at it, I have my internal people who are all actual accounts, and inside my Contoso Active Directory up there, you can see I've got both my internal people and I've got my guest accounts. So if you're using PowerShell, you can go through and see they're type 5. So you could filter them out and say, hey, bring me back all my guest accounts. And my guest accounts are literally just a pointer to someone else's account. So if I go through and I add you, Bob, as an example, what auth provider, what do you guys use for your?
So we're 3.
No, but you guys use Ping, is that right?
Yeah.
So when I share something with Bob, when Bob goes to sign in, he's not going to see, we use Okta. He's not going to see Okta. He's going to see Ping. So I share it with Bob at Takeda. He clicks the link. He gets his normal Ping login. His password policy applies. He doesn't create a separate account. If he wins the lottery and decides to leave Takeda and they turn off his account, he no longer has access to my tenant. So this is like best case scenario. Someone leaves, their employer has full control over whether or not that account stays active. I'm not responsible for offboarding because it's someone else's. So the account that lives in my directory is literally just a pointer back to his Azure Active Directory account or his Microsoft account. Either one of those two, and that pointer lives inside my directory rather than, you know, a username and password that I've got to go manage. Yeah. How does this affect licensing? Great question. Guest accounts are not charged. So they're free. Yeah. 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 So you did want something even better than that. So when I joined the company that I'm at, they had been creating cloud accounts for all of their people, you know, on Microsoft.com. And first kind of thing that I saw when I came in was I said, hey, that's a really big risk. So the risk, just to talk through it, is if someone in your company goes through and says, I want to share with everyone except external people, all of the people outside the company who they shared with are considered to be internal. So the definition of external versus internal is if you're an internal account, if you're in that blue box on the screen, which includes all of your cloud accounts, then they can see anything that's shared with everyone inside your company. As opposed to if they are a guest account, then you don't buy them a license, and they're in a box, and when you share with everyone except external people, it's not shared with them. So they can't access your intranet, get at your org charts, you know, go do a search and go find a bunch of stuff. Like, to me, that's actually a really, really good, important kind of differentiator between these. So I thought I had this slide in here. It's a great, all of these, like, you can see how much conversation is happening, you know, over this. It's an area that's not well enough understood, but it's kind of super, super important. I made people, so it was fun. Like, we had Post-it notes and everyone wrote down what they were worried about. And we did like affinitization of like, these are the threats and how do we mitigate those threats. And it was all up kind of security stuff. It was good.
Are we on?
No,
We're
going to the admin section.
Guest account expiration.
Yeah.
So my company disables my password.
Yeah.
My company gives access. They
Yeah.
just give away my.
Wait, say that again?
So, there are ways
They
to
just
get
your account and give it to him?
Right, so a company could disable my account or
Okay.
keeping access.
Sure.
So is there a way for me as a sharer?
Yes. Not as a sharer, as IT. Currently in preview. So if you are sharing by adding the member into a group, it is part of Azure AD P2, I believe. And it's literally, like I saw it for the first time a couple weeks ago. It's literally like a life cycle review that says every X number of days, people inside this group need to be reviewed, and then you go through and it reviews the list, and you need to approve them for continuation or discontinuation. They built out a whole kind of UI around it. So if you have an Azure AD P2 or if you have EMS, you can do that. It's preview, and it's not mature in that it works one group at a time, which feels kind of clunky that you create them. But the ideas at least are out there on a piece of paper saying, hey, we know we need to automate that process of reviewing which guests are in this group and making that an easy process. So they're moving toward that, even if there's an extra license in it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question. So nothing that I showed you relies on groups other than adding them to an Office 365 group and using Teams. On a communication site, on a classic team site, the document library experience is exactly the same as what I just showed you. So if I go off and I'm using the modern document library and I go off and I say share, I'm going to see the exact same thing. I can make those same links inside there. In terms of policy for doing security reviews, I can't kind of, I don't know what industry you're in. I don't know any of you other security controls, so it's hard for me to gauge that, but we could have a longer conversation about what you guys are doing and what you're thinking, if that's helpful.
But you're able to access reports that are available.
So I'm not sure what reports you're referring to. You want like a permission matrix of every perm on every file and everything like that?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of something. I know a third party that does stuff like that. I don't know of anything inside Office 365 that generates out like a giant access control list kind of report.
Third party.
Totally. So that's kind of external users and groups. I'm going to jump into admin controls because I know we got timing and I want to be done in less than 15 minutes for you. Managing all this stuff, locking it down, figuring out external sharing. There's really 4 different levers that we're going to play with inside here. Number 1 level is who can share to external users. Do I want everyone to be able to share with external users? Do I want only specific people to be able to share with external users? Do I want no one to share with external users? This is my favorite control. It is new within the last 6 months, but I think this is the number 1 thing. Previously, if you're an admin of a site and that site has external sharing, you can do external sharing whether you know anything or not. So for me, I make people take a quiz. When you take the quiz, I add you to the Active Directory group of people who are responsible adults. Congratulations, you know what you're doing. I trust you. You may now share with outside people. You've taken an IT security awareness class. You've completed the quiz. Congrats, you can share externally. You want to share externally in OneDrive? No problem. Take this quiz. You want to share externally in SharePoint? You took the quiz, good to go. But it gives me an extra control that I didn't used to have to say only people who I trust have the ability to go do it. So that's an option you have. Next one. Who do you want to share with? So I can say I can share with anyone. I can say I can share. This was the conversation we were having earlier about your tenant, right? Anyone? Only authenticated users that I put in my Active Directory. You can't share with anyone who hasn't been through a background check and a security process and whatever process your company requires. You can implement that and say, hey, we have our own onboarding process in order to get into Active Directory. You can also go through and say, I'm going to whitelist specific domains. I'm going to blacklist domains. I don't want people sharing with Gmail and with Facebook and, take out these 30 addresses. You can't share with them. You can only share to legit addresses, or you can go through and, say only these 12 companies that we have non-disclosure agreements can you do external sharing. All depends on your requirements. Next, I can look at what can be shared outside. Can I share any site, or can I only share on specific sites? So for me, it depends on the industry you're in. If you're in a place where it's totally cool, I work for an EDU and it's all right to go share from any site to any place, rock and roll. If you're in a heavily regulated industry and you have a lot of proprietary IP, I might say only on these specific sites with these extra controls do I want to turn on external sharing. So you can do it and flip it on or off at the site collection level. That's why we made everything into site collections, so we have that control to toggle it on or off. Next one, I can say, how can they be used? So I can say, oh, sorry, was there? I saw a hand. How can the externally shareable links be used? So I can set a default. I can go through and I can say externally shareable, meaning anyone, anonymous, right? So can Can they be used by anyone? Can they be not the default? I can force an expiration date inside there. I can block them. I can disable them. So I've got a bunch of different choices inside there. So looking a little bit at what this looks like, controlling who they can share with, those are my options right there. Most restrictive at the top, don't allow sharing outside my organization. You can only share with people on the inside. Next, only the people who I put in my directory. Next, anyone who, what was that?
No.
Oh, all right, cool. I heard something. I was like, what? Only people who are authenticated, right? And that'll get into the one-time password. If I'm in that second option, I won't get a one-time password, right? Because that's only people who are in my Azure Active Directory. If I'm in the third one, even if you don't have an account, I can go share with you. And then that fourth one that's selected by default is I can share a link that is going to be available to anyone who has that link. I can make a key, and anyone who has the key can come get to that particular file. That has a little sub-check mark of, hey, that's going to expire in X days. If you set that to 90, they can choose any number up to 90 for that particular link. If you set that to 30, they cannot choose 60. So it's a not to exceed threshold. And it's a good idea because you don't want someone to say, hey, anyone can go use this key, and then wait, 2 years later, someone else finds that key, and it's like, oh, cool, let's go do that. I like the idea of anonymous links expiring. I think that's a valuable thing. And I can also set a policy that says anonymous links can be view only. You can't make an editable anonymous link. You want to edit stuff? Please log in. That's a fair requirement. So all of these are policy trade-offs that you or your SharePoint admin has control over. These are all right in SharePoint Admin Center on the Sharing tab. Same thing with folders. The next section, just scrolling down the page, right? Who can share to external users? And your choices are check a box and say only people in this security group can share with authenticated users, or only people in this box can share with anonymous users, which is sort of interesting, right? So you could say anyone in my company can share with authenticated users, but only people who are in communications and only people who are in, I don't know, pick your other non-sensitive function. Comms and IT are the two functions that I'm going to go let make anonymous links, but no one else in the company has the ability to go do that. So some really neat kind of policy control that we can do inside here to make sure that the right sharing is happening. So we're balancing, ease of use, consumer grade stuff with getting all the controls that we want. So that's kind of the security groups inside there. And more than one, which is nice. Just going through the build on here, yes, you could block sharing entirely and say, I don't want any sharing outside my organization at all, but if this is what you want to do, you probably didn't just spend the last hour and a half hanging out with us. So I'm guessing if you're here, you're interested in sharing stuff. Other things that you can do on a per group, on the group side, you can go through and you can control each one. You can control external sharing on the group side as well. Let me see. What else? Which user can be shared with? We did it. This is the next one. So who can I share with? Authenticated and anonymous, that fourth option inside there. You can also have the domains at the bottom. So do I want to go through and limit this to specific? There we go. Please block people from Gmail. I don't want to share with Gmail because I feel like, I don't know, that's where Dave sends all of his test email accounts. So get a real domain, or only allow people from these three. So you can whitelist or blacklist. Separate them out, have multiple inside there. Only allow it from these two companies that we have an NDA. Something important to know. On a classic team site, you can do this on a site collection by site collection basis. So you can say, this is my site where I share with Microsoft. This is my site where I share with IBM. You try to use an IBM address on the Microsoft site, it says no. You try to use a Microsoft address on the IBM site, it says no. That was control that we have in the classic world. That doesn't exist on modern team I'm I'm looking for announcements. SharePoint conference isn't that far away in May, so hopefully that would be an awesome thing to have them announce. It's certainly something that I think is good to be able to limit it. But with the extra controls around people, I don't lose sleep over it. So,
there's a question online.
yes. We can go look at it too, but the answer is yes. Just like you saw that shareable link sitting right next to the members, owners, and visitors group, I could have 3 or 4 different shareable links on there. I could have an anonymous link. I could have a editable by people in my company. I could have a view link for 4 specific people. You can stack all of them. It's just another claim. It's another permission on the file, just like any other person or anything else. Cool. So finally, kind of at a tenant level, I can go through and have a tenant level control that just says, hey, do I want to allow it on a specific site? So I can say only these specific sites are going to allow sharing. It's just this particular one. And this is, I've got a site collection clicked on inside Admin Center, and I click on the sharing setting for that particular site collection. So rather than my wide policy, I'm saying in general, these are the things I can do. I'm blocking it on everything except for these 6 sites, which are my external partner sites that I'm going through and allowing guests on. So you can control where that external sharing inside SharePoint is allowed. It doesn't need to be a tenant-wide policy. It can be specific site collections that you light up or turn on or off. That kind of covers the 4 different sections inside here. Really kind of a bunch of protections that give you a lot of autonomy, a lot of choice to go through and decide what policy you want to go create. Set the right defaults on it so that users have an easy choice on here. So I can say, hey, in general, I want to make it so that everyone gets anonymous links because I work for a startup with 6 people and we all sit in the same room and know what we're doing. And that fits our company. Or I can go through and say my default, which is the one I choose, is internal. Someone's got to take an action if they want to say, I want to have specific people and go add external people on it. You choose what are the defaults. You can also choose the default around view or edit. Maybe you say, hey, by default, it's going to be internal and edit. Or you work differently and you say, hey, it's going to be specific people and view, whatever makes sense for you. Other controls inside here around anonymous links, being able to go through and configure all of those. Resharing. So this is the control I told you about earlier, Bob. So I can go through and I can say 2 things. Number 1, external users have to accept the invite from the same address that I sent it to. So don't go forward it to your Gmail and accept it with your Gmail account. That's one I highly recommend. I think that's a really good one. I send you a link to your company and say, hey, Bob at Microsoft, please accept this link. I don't want Bob forwarding that email over and accepting it with his Gmail account. Because I'm sending it to him at Microsoft. I'm trusting that Microsoft is, who I'm actually sending it to. So I highly, highly like that first checkbox. That's one that I always do personally. And I uncheck the second box usually saying, don't let external people share files that they don't own. If you're an external person and you create a file, feel free to go share it. But don't share stuff that isn't yours because you aren't part of the team. But those are things that you can kind of think about and consider for what makes sense for you. Inside Office 365 groups, this is our last flip switch that we have. I can decide, am I going to let people get added to groups who are external? Yes or no? And really just that top level kill switch, right? Do I want to allow it is the first one. So yes, I can have an external person. I can have a guest inside my groups. And the bottom one says, can people manage it themselves, or is IT the only one who has the ability to go do this? So I can certainly have my own way of going through and adding people in here. I could go into Azure AD and add them to the group. I can say only people who have rights at a tenant level can go through and add guests into that group. Or more likely, I can turn this on and say, hey, if you're an owner of the group, go add people. None of those granular SharePoint controls that we looked at Why? Because this isn't SharePoint. This is Teams. Teams. So within Teams, I can't say only let someone add an external person who's part of this. So you've got all the fine-grained granular stuff inside SharePoint, but in terms of Office 365 groups, it's either on or off. Either owners can or can't invite. A little bit simpler there. There's not the same complexity, but your rules inside SharePoint are still going to be enforced. So a lot of fun stuff inside there. I'm hoping there will be lots of good kind of conversations over this, but hopefully this did something to at least open your eyes to kind of the various ways that one can share inside Office 365, mainly inside SharePoint, but talking about all the things from an end user perspective, the controls we can put on to make it okay so that, you know, security doesn't come by and say, hey, no external sharing in SharePoint and OneDrive. Don't do that. No, wait, we've got great stuff we can show you. We've got good ways we can help balance it for you. So I think the platform's come a huge way in the last 6 months, and it can be a little scary as you see all the user interface change and you see this new drop-down list with different colors on it. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time with you guys to hang out and do that. So thank you for coming by and hanging out.
Awesome. Thanks again, Dave. That was awesome. So we're going to run through just a couple more updates, and we have a raffle, so you want to stay around for that, and then we're going to go drinking. Thursday. Cool. So there are other user groups in the area. We are not the only one. We're the best one, but we're not the only one. Actually, the SQL user groups next door, they're not on here for some reason. We'll have to add them. But there is a SharePoint-specific user group that meets Tuesdays or Wednesdays. There's a New Hampshire one, so if you're further north of the city, there's a New Hampshire SharePoint one. If you're further south of the city, there is one in Connecticut. That's a SharePoint user group. And then we also have Azure, Link, and PowerShell user groups. All of these links will jump to their sites. Some upcoming events. Their PowerShell user group has a session on the 28th. March 1st is the Granite State one with Chris McNulty. If you don't know Chris McNulty, he's a Microsoft, what's his official title now? They keep revamping over there. Product evangelist, product owner, something.
He's an MVP.
And he's an MVP? Cool. The App in a Day, March 3rd, that's with Slalom, my company. I'll be running that session where we're going to be walking through a hands-on 6-hour session on how to use Power Apps and Flow in a real-life example. If you're interested in that, let me know. We still have seats open. Global Azure Boot Camp, that is much like a SharePoint Saturday if you've been to one. It's an all-day Azure event, hands-on. You bring your hardware and you walk through a lot of Azure awesomeness. I recommend that. And SharePoint Conference in Vegas, SharePointNA.com. Anybody going to that? Awesome. Sweet. Are we missing anything here? Any other community events you would want to share with the group? Anything coming up that you may be aware of? Not aware of? Yes.
Yes, so just adding,
Right. Cool. We'll add SP Tech onto this slide. All right. Next month, I will be presenting. I will be talking on Microsoft Flow and Power Apps and why they rock. This is an abbreviated version of our App in a Day workshop. So it's all the same slideware. You just won't be doing anything hands-on. So it takes 6 hours, cram it down to about 45 minutes, much like what Dave just did. That is March 15th, third Thursday. It will hopefully be here. We haven't secured it yet, but we can always secure a room here. So should be here, TBD. If it changes, you'll know through emails and all that other stuff. If you're not on our mailing list, please join. It's the link down below. If you go to our website, or if you register through Eventbrite, you'll be on our mailing list. That's how we do most of our communications for our sessions. Anybody facing any type of problems or want to share any quick tips about what you've recently discovered or seen inside of Office 365? Kind of open this up. If you have a technical problem, you're like, we can't figure this out, you can throw it out there and see if another expert in the room or somebody else may have an answer. Everyone is running smoothly. That is awesome.
I figured out one of my problems
That.
today because
Yeah.
where versus direct access.
Nice.
Able to switch that.
Awesome. Right, right.
So, and then it keeps changing.
Nice. Anybody else? If you're exploring Teams and you think it has a good mobile story, it's not that great. I recently found out the hard way. I have a blog article on it as well. But the Teams app conversations works. That part's great. When you start like having a tab for other stuff, like an Excel file or forms or a PowerPoint file, it leaves the mobile Teams app and opens up that file natively in your other apps, which is not bad. However, if you have a form from Microsoft Forms, goes to Microsoft Forms website, it doesn't even show you the form. It just sends you to their website. So you can't even fill out the forms on the mobile app, which is terrible. So just a heads up, if you're looking at Teams, the mobile experience there is still much to be desired in my book. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To my knowledge, that's
so that's on Microsoft's roadmap, but it works now. And I don't know if maybe they don't know.
Even that, it works inconsistent.
Okay.
Because
Is that inside?
when it's inside the tenant,
Yeah.
Federation between
Oh,
with external
okay.
users is the one.
That makes more sense. Yeah.
You can have both.
Microsoft knows. It knows which one you want. Yes. But I think the question was around the permissions. If you add somebody to a SharePoint site, do they get added to the Teams? Was it a permissions? And then, or if you add someone to a team, do they get to the SharePoint site? Be aware with that scenario that there is a sync job that has to run to get those permissions across the board. I've shared Teams with people and then they can't get to any of the files because the files are in SharePoint and the permissions hasn't synced over yet. So that's fun. Be aware. You gotta give it. I don't know what the time is, but
It's like 24 hours.
Oh, we're that long? Yeah. Wow. Okay.
I have another one.
Yes.
When creating their document library,
A library within the SharePoint site of a team.
yep.
Cool. Well, you shouldn't be doing that, obviously.
Clearly,
What's the problem?
clearly. So, I mean, everything works fine. What I found is
Sounds like a user voice thing right there.
yeah,
Post that.
yeah.
Cool. Anybody else? Awesome.
Updates on
Yes.
the management.
Sorry?
So one
Yeah. Yeah. We see any streamlined ways around that to kind of help find groups and sites based upon purely the group name?
So the other thing you can do is inside.
they create a group versus no, because by default, even at so I had one where
Like, is there a way to?
Like 3 lines of PowerShell build.
To help you with yours,
group name could be one.
Talking about.
Created. I have learned to filter that, but it's
In SharePoint, no one's hitting the site, must be fine, there was a Yammer group, so.
Cool.
Can I ask?
Power apps. Power Apps fixes all that. Cool. Anyone hiring or looking for work? Anybody kind of?
Looking for work, I'm a SharePoint consultant.
My company is also hiring. My practice, we are looking for content management, web content management architects and developers. Sitecore, Adobe AEM, Adobe Experience Manager, Drupal.
I have 3 needs and a request. So we're looking for a few different roles. One was around the Azure service. The third one is around ethical firewalls. So if you have experience with help. I have a client that ESP 5.0.
Come on.
And Microsoft can't find the installation files anyway. So this was what they acquired from FAST before they rewrote it all to be. Anyone that might have that, please talk.
That's fantastic. Wow. Awesome.
It's over 100 server farm.
Yeah.
They don't have.
All right. All right, cool. Time for the raffle. So we have 3 $25 Amazon gift cards that will be delivered electronically.